Okay, so let us start the class. Okay. Okay, so are you able to see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you remember, so today, yeah, so you remember we discussed this stochastic gradient descent algorithm. Okay, so what is the stochastic gradient descent algorithm? Basically, okay, so yeah, so the problem is that you are given a data set D, okay, and you are given a loss function L, okay, and the loss function can be something like this for linear model where your basically your prediction function is theta transpose phi of x, okay, and then you have to minimize this L, uh, minimize with respect to theta, this L of theta comma D, okay, and your assumption is that this D is drawn IID from some distribution, okay. And we also discussed last time the algorithm. So the algorithm, the update is something like this, okay. And then we are going to analyze this theta bar, okay, which is basically this eta weighted average of theta t. So you have all these theta 1 till theta capital T, okay. These are the parameters which are generated by the algorithm, okay. And this theta bar is basically this eta weighted average of theta t, okay. And if you remember, we discussed this upper bound, okay. So in today's class, we are going to discuss how to derive this upper bound, okay. Okay, so in order to derive this upper bound, okay, we consider this RT, which you can think of something like a residual, okay. So your RT is something like a residual. So this is theta t minus theta star, okay. If you recall, this theta star is basically, so your S theta is the expected loss, okay. So you just take expectation with respect to the probability distribution, the loss, okay. And theta star is the minimizer of the expected loss, okay. So these are sort of the correct quantities, okay. And now you are trying to derive the upper bound, okay. So you have this quantity RT, which is kind of the distance from the optimal loss at any point in time, and you have the GT, which is your gradient at time t, okay. Now you get this first, you get the first equation, which is RT plus 1 square is equal to RT square plus eta t square norm of GT square twice eta t theta t minus theta star transpose GT. Okay, so this you can derive just by substituting this this RT into the update equation, into this update equation. Okay, so let me write the update equation here. So what is that? So the update equation is something like this, that theta t plus 1 is equal to theta t minus eta t gt. Okay, now if you just subtract theta star from both sides, you get this RT. So you get RT plus 1 is equal to RT minus eta t gt. Okay, and now if you take square here, okay, and you yeah, so this RT square is also basically this is also not, because this yeah, so your basically so no, you know, RT square is basically, you can think of it as theta t minus theta star transpose theta t minus theta star. Okay, so this is another way of thinking about it. And so uh, yeah, so and you can basically uh, you can derive by sort of taking r t plus 1. So forget the square here. Yeah, so this is just dot product of this. Okay, yeah, so this is RT plus 1 transpose RT plus 1. Okay, and then you can get this right hand side by expanding. Okay, so the first step is clear. Okay, now what do? You sort of so next what we want to do is we want to basically derive an upper bound over this. Okay, so how do we do this? So we basically utilize again here the convexity of S. Okay, so if you see, okay, so suppose you want to just so uh, this is your, let's say your theta t. Okay, so let's say this is your theta t and this is your theta star. Okay, and this is your function S. Sorry, this is theta star and this is your function S. Okay, so all we are doing is we are saying that, look, if we sort of extrapolate the function around theta t, okay, and calculate S. So we try to calculate S star. So we are trying to do a Taylor expansion around theta t. So this will be S theta t plus GT transpose theta star minus theta t plus some higher order terms, which for convex functions are always positive, right? So the curvature is always positive. So you can get that S star, okay, minus S of theta t is always greater than or equal to GT transpose theta star minus theta t. Okay. Okay. And now you substitute this in this. Okay. So you have GT transpose theta t minus theta star, an upper bound on that. So you substitute that. So you get an upper bound on this term. Okay. And then you take expectation with respect to P and theta and you get this inequality. Okay, that expectation with respect to theta bar RT square minus RT plus 1 square minus RT square is less than or equal to this eta t square L square. So this GT square now we have substituted by an upper bound or norm of GT, which is L. Okay, so this is zeta t square L square plus twice eta t times this. Okay, and then so once you have this, after this, if you just take sum over t is equal to 1 to capital T, okay, then you will see that alternate terms will cancel. So So there is a plus minus going on here between RT and RT plus 1. Okay. So alternate terms will get cancelled. So on this side, you will be left with RT plus 1 and on my RT plus 1 square minus R0 square. And on this side, you will be left with, on right hand side, you will be left with all the summations. Okay. Okay. So this is how you derive this equation. Okay. Now, what do we want to do? So we want, okay, so let me now remove this part. Okay. Now, if you remember, what we want is, so, or we want an upper bound on this one. Okay, on this summation t is equal to 0 to capital T minus 1 eta t expectation with respect to theta bar s of theta t. Okay, and then if we have that, then we can just substitute this. Okay. Yeah, so this, sorry, we want a lower bound because this is in negative. So we want a lower bound on this. Okay, so this is what we are trying to lower bound here. Okay, so so I have just taken the expectation. So this, by linearity of expectation, we can just say that this is just expectation with respect to theta bar, and then summation over t. I'm just not writing this thing, and then this is eta t s of theta t. Okay. Okay. So we want a lower bound on this. Okay. This is the right hand side. Okay. Now, how do we have lower bound on this? Okay. So for getting lower bound, you recall the definition of theta bar. Okay. So theta bar is summation over eta t, theta t by summation over eta t. Okay. So pictorially, you can think of it as there are many different theta t's. Okay. This is theta 1, theta 2, and so on and so forth. Okay. And this is theta t. Okay. And now theta bar is somewhere in the middle. So this is a convex combination of theta t's. Okay. Now, if we take, so we know that if we take, let's say, S of theta bar, okay, which is the S of convex combination of these things, this is going to be less than or equal to, okay, the convex combination, which is summation over eta t S of theta t by summation over eta t. Okay, so this is using convexity. So this is using convexity. Okay, this is property of convex function, which is S. Okay, so if you now just substitute here, okay, so if you just multiply here, so what do we get? So let me remove this one. Okay, so if you just multiply summation eta t to this side, you get that summation over eta t times S of theta bar is less than or equal to summation over eta t times S of theta t. Okay, and now you take expectation with respect to theta bar. This eta t does not depend on theta bar. So expectation with respect to theta bar comes here, and expectation with respect to theta bar comes here. Okay, so this is the lower bound on this last term that we got here. Okay, and now if we substitute that, we get this. Okay, so okay, so this is how we get this. Okay, so this should be clear. Okay, and now let me clear this up. Okay, and now if you just rearrange the term, you get the different the equations that we just discussed. So you see that okay, so here expectation of over theta bar, this RT square plus R0 square. The upper bound on this, remember, is R square. So this whole term is just you can say minus of R square, because this R0 is much bigger than this. Okay, so we are just sort of going to say this is minus of R square. Okay, sort of lower bound on this. Okay, and so what we are interested in is this thing. Okay, minus of this. So let us, if we bring this to this side, we get this expectation over theta bar, S of theta bar minus S star. Okay, this is going to be less than or equal to, first term is L square summation eta t square. Okay, and then we bring this, so R square to this side, so R square, and then there is this product over summation over eta t. Okay, so we divide by summation over eta t. Okay, so this is, if you see, this is the identity that we discussed. Okay, this is the identity that we discussed. Okay, so basically, just to recollect, we have first done an expansion using the update rule. Okay, then we have used convexity. Then we have used linearity of expectation and some algebra. Okay, and then finally we have used convexity once more to get the result. Okay. 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 So now we get into what are the issues with SGD. Okay. So the first issue with, so the biggest issue with SGD, if you see, is that the updates are very noisy or very oscillating. So if you see over the updates, the value of loss, you will see curved like this. Okay, and these updates are especially bad towards this end part. Okay, this noise is especially bad towards this end part. Okay, why is this bad? Because you are using a noisy gradient. Okay, so that is the problem. Okay, so how do we solve that problem? Okay, so the first way to solve that problem is, instead of using one example per iteration, okay, we use a mini batch or many examples per iteration. Okay, so in general, you can use m examples per iteration. Okay, so this GT, okay, earlier this was XT, YT. Okay, now what you use is a mini batch of examples. So let's say at update T, you can use XT1, YT1 till XTM, YTM. Okay, and then your new gradient GT, let's call this G hat T. Okay, this is just going to be 1 by m summation over I gradient of xti comma yti. Okay, so and then the update equation is exactly the same. Update equation, there is no change. Okay, and so this is called the mini batch SGD. This is what is generally used. Okay, and this has also another advantage that it allows for some kind of parallelization. So you may have a system where you may have many cores. Okay, so for example, you may have many GPUs or something like this. Okay, so you can compute all these gradients for the entire mini batch for this m examples of the mini batch all in parallel, and then you can do the update. Okay, so this is another advantage of using mini batch SGD. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you some example from the Leon Bottius paper, which initially proposed this. Okay, so here the problem that we are discussing is basically classification using the Reuters RCV1 document corpus. Okay, and the task is basically that you have many text documents. Okay, and you have to classify them into one of the many classes. Okay, one of the many categories. Okay, and you have around maybe close to 800,000 training examples, and you have some 23,000 test examples. Okay, and you have D features, which is about 50,000. And for each of these features, you have basically these are one feature per word. Okay, and that is your, so your each document is a sparse document. Okay. Okay, so here is the result. So you can see here that okay, you can see here that the first row corresponds to standard SVM. Okay, and it is taking some 23,000 seconds. Okay, and here is the value of final loss function value, which is the optimal loss function value. And here is the final optimal test error. Okay. Now they compared this also against fast SVM. This is some kind of very, very customized, standardized, like dual coordinate descent kind of thing, or like some kind of coordinate descent algorithm. Okay. Which is taking 66 seconds. Okay. You see, there is not much difference between either the optimal objective function value or the optimal test error, but it has dramatically reduced. Okay, and now what Leon Bottius showed is that using SGD SVM, you can do this in 1.4 seconds. Okay, objective function value is also comparable. Okay, in this case, the loss function value, optimal loss function value. Okay, and also the test error is comparable. Okay, so the question was, is SGD successful in minimizing the loss? Yes, it is successful. Is it faster? Yes, it is faster. Okay, is the test error comparable? Yes, the test error is comparable. Okay, so this was kind of a breakthrough result. Okay, now here is a somewhat more deep dive into this, how SGD exactly works. Okay, so on the x-axis here, okay, we are showing the suboptimality. Okay, So this is like the training loss function, sometimes also called cost function, okay, minus the optimal training loss function, okay. Okay, so this is what we are looking at, okay. So basically you can think, so your blue line is SGD and red line is liblinear, which is that basically coordinate descent method, okay. So what you can see, or it's a dual coordinate descent actually, okay. So what you can see here is that if you are interested in some, let's say 10 to the power minus 6 suboptimality, so you are at best 10 to the power minus 6 worse than the optimal loss, okay, then so y-axis is the time taken, okay, so then the time taken is much less than the time taken for corresponding suboptimality of liblinear, okay. But if you want a very very optimal or very accurate solution, let's say 10 to the power minus 8 suboptimality, then the time taken by SGD is much larger. So if you want a highly accurate optimization, then the SGD is not a good answer. But for machine learning problems, it is okay if you want to quickly reach a suboptimality which is not too accurate, okay. So this, if you are stopping here, like at the 10 to the power minus 6 range, then you will be much faster than other optimization methods, okay. And this is an analysis again, the same thing against conjugate gradient analysis. And so here you can see this is the stochastic gradient descent. This is the actual gradient descent, okay. And these are conjugate gradient descent methods, okay. And these are on basically, I think, logistic regression, okay. And yeah, so you can see that, and again, x-axis is the time here, x-axis is the time, okay. So you can see that you can reach test loss value of 0.2 very quickly, or even something like 0.15 or 0.16 very quickly, okay, much faster than either gradient descent or sort of conjugate gradient descent with different different training set sizes, okay. Okay, but after a while it just saturates. So for example, gradient descent will be able to reach 0.1, okay, but you don't really need this. So if your test loss is here, you are good enough in many machine learning applications, okay. Okay, now another question or another practical question is, how will you choose this eta t? Okay, so if you remember, what we saw is that your eta t should satisfy for convergence, okay, or rather for convergence guarantee in expectation, your eta t should satisfy that your summation over eta t square should be finite, okay, and summation over eta t should go to infinity, okay. And you can see, in other words, eta t should be a sequence, something like, so if it is, let's say 1 by t, okay, so we know that 1 by t square is convergent, okay, but 1 by t is not convergent, 1 by t is divergent, okay. In fact, 1 by t is the one that is just divergent. So 1 by t to the power 1 plus epsilon is convergent, right? So you can think that anything like anything which is of the form, let us say, yeah. So 1 by t to the power half plus epsilon. Okay. Anything of like this will have convergence guarantee. Okay. So some of the choices of eta t are that if eta t is a constant, okay, then you don't have guarantee. Okay. But if your eta t is 1 by t or of anything of this form, you have a convergence guarantee. So a general form of eta t that sometimes people use is something like this. Okay. So here, this is eta 0. So your eta t is basically eta 0 by t plus t0. Okay. Now t0 is so t0 is not crucial. Okay. And t0 you can just choose something like 1 or something. Okay. It doesn't matter. Okay. But your eta 0 is your initial learning rate. Okay. So if you use some kind of deep learning packages, you will see that it allows you to choose eta 0. Okay. And how do you choose eta 0? So a simple way of choosing eta 0 is that you start with a high value of eta 0, something like 10, let's say, and you keep going down logarithmically. So after 10, you try 1, okay, 0.1, 0.01, and so on and so forth until it converges. Okay. So, and you can try this on a small sample of the training data set also. Here you are just looking for convergence. So once you have a particular value of eta 0 for which you know that it converges, you can then use that particular eta 0 as your starting rate. Okay. Now this is a comparison of different step size rules on some particular problem. Okay. So this blue one is basically a constant step size rule. Okay. Okay. So, and then this orange one is the time-based step size rule, which we just use. So these are commonly used. There is also the step decay step size rule, which is that instead of decaying the step size like this over time, okay, you can do something like you can keep it constant for some time and then reduce it and then keep it constant and reduce it and so on and so forth. Okay, this is the green one. Okay, but yeah, it is here it is showing better, but these perform very similarly. Okay, time based and step decay, and also the step decay is kind of more difficult to tune. So how should you decay and all that? Okay, and this one is exponential decay, and you can see that it clearly converges prematurely, so converges to a lower value. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so another, okay, this is again wrong. So another practical consideration here is that how do you, how do you incorporate sparse updates? Okay, so many a times if you see that at least for SVM, you will see that the gradient many a times is just, or for many of the linear models, it is just the feature vector. Okay, and which is very sparse. And also in case of neural networks, sometimes you will see that your gradient GT is very sparse. Okay. So many of the neurons don't fire, and then maybe you are out of, so you have a very large number of parameters. So your theta t may be something like let's say 1 million dimensional. Okay, so 1 million dimensional, and your you have only 100 of the neurons firing. Okay, so your gradient is only 100 dimensional. Okay, so in that case you can do this parse update where you just store the coordinate of the parameter which is non-zero and then update it. Okay, and then the question is, if you see the update, so let me write the update. Your update is W goes to W minus eta times W plus some gradient of loss. Okay. Now here you see this W is dense. Okay, so this W is dense. This is sparse. Okay, so what you can do is, this dense update is expensive. So this dense update you can do maybe one every 100 times. Okay, and use sparse update you do every time. Okay, so this you skip once, you do once every 100 updates. Okay, this update you do every time. Okay, so this is another practical way of speeding up the updates. Okay. Okay. Now, yeah, so this is what I just described. Okay. Okay. Lastly, the question is, till what time should you run the SGD iterations? Okay. And the answer to this is that, so if you see all the proofs, they were for t tends to infinity. Okay. So in practice, what you can do, you can run it till a large number, say t is equal to, let's say 1000 epochs or some, or maybe in updates you can go to, let's say 1 million updates. Okay, so you can do 1 million updates, and let's say each update is taking a microsecond or something. So you will take 10 or 100 or 1000 second. Okay, now. But then you can also do an early stopping. Okay, so in order to do early stopping, what do? You basically take a validation set. Okay, and either at the end of each epoch or at the end of, let's say, a certain number of updates, something like, let's say, after every 1000 updates. Okay, you keep monitoring the performance on the validation set. Okay, and you can set up a criterion, something like, if the loss function value or the cost function value has not decreased significantly, let's say it has not decreased by more than let's say 10 to the power minus 6 or something over, let's say, the past 5 updates. Okay. Okay, past 5. Here, past 5 update means last 5 times that you have checked. So basically, past 5 epochs, let's say. Okay, then you can stop the SGD iteration and you can take the running minimum. So another thing is that you typically then take the running minimum of the validation set. Okay, the eta t for which you actually obtain the minimum on the validation set. Okay, that is your final parameter. Okay, so up till now we have seen this stochastic gradient descent. Okay, but the stochastic gradient descent method sometimes performs redundant computations. Okay, so what are the sources of redundant computations? Okay, so the first source of redundant computation is this overshooting. Okay, so consider a objective function which has contours something like this. Okay, now you see that on the x direction, okay, you have to travel a long distance in order to achieve the minimum. Okay, But on the y direction, even if you travel a little bit, you achieve the minimum. Okay. So you not only achieve the minimum, you overshoot the minimum. So you get this kind of a zigzag pattern. Okay. Now, how to stop this kind of a zigzag pattern? Okay. So this is addressed by a technique called the momentum. Okay. So this is a general technique used in optimization. So what momentum does is, so your VT here is the update direction. Okay. What momentum would do is it would take a little bit of VT minus 1. So your gamma is, let's say, something like 0.1. Okay. And this eta is maybe something like 0.9. Okay. So this is the current gradient. Okay. This is the past direction, update direction. Your new update direction is going to be something like 10% of the past update direction and 90% of the new update direction. Okay. And then you perform the actual update. Okay. And then what will happen? See, on the X direction, it is consistently moving to the right. Okay. Whereas on the Y direction, it is oscillating. Okay. So when you take these past updates, the oscillation on the Y direction will actually cancel each other out. So one time it will be positive, another time it will be negative. Okay. But on the X direction, it will keep on accumulating. Okay. So you can see that it will sort of accelerate the learning in the X direction, whereas it will dampen the learning in the Y direction. Okay. So this is the idea behind the momentum. Okay. Now, what you can do is, so what Nesterov pointed out earlier is that so there is a flaw in this. Okay, so what is the flaw? The flaw is that what you are going to, so what is your update going to be here? Your update is going to be theta minus gamma times Vt minus 1 plus, you know, this eta times gradient of t, right? Okay. So actually you are doing the update on gamma times Vt minus 1. Theta minus gamma times Vt minus 1. Okay. So this is your, let's say, theta t. So this is your theta t plus 1. Okay. But you are computing the GT at theta t. So what Nesterov said is that, no, you compute the GT at theta t minus gamma times Vt minus 1. Okay. So this is the Nesterov version of momentum, sometimes called Nesterov momentum, sometimes called Nesterov update. So instead of, so here is the thing. So instead of, instead of calculating the gradient at the current point and then doing the updates, you first move a little bit to the previous direction, calculate the gradient there, and then come back and do the update. Okay. So that is the difference between the, so you jump in the direction of the pre-accumulated gradient. Okay. And then you measure the new gradient. Okay. And then you do the correction. Okay. So this is the Nesterov accelerated gradient descent. Okay. Okay. Now this, both Nesterov acceleration and the previous this thing, these are both ways of incorporating momentum. Okay. So momentum is one way of accelerating these gradient descent kind of updates. Okay. Another way of accelerating gradient descent updates is what is called adaptive gradients. Okay. In general, they are called adaptive gradients. And the idea comes from something like a Newton method or a quasi-Newton method. The basic idea is that you see in Newton's method, the update formula, if you remember from your optimization course, is something like theta t plus 1 is equal to theta t minus, if you remember, this is something like gt by this Hessian, let me just call this ht, okay? Or sometimes it is also written for, this is for a single dimensional. So for multi-dimensional things, you will see something like ht inverse gt, okay? So this is how it is written, okay? So what is happening here? Basically, this ht is the second moment of the gradient. So that is one way of thinking about it, is that ht is the second moment of gradient, or it is measuring the rate of change of gradient. Okay. Yeah. So what these adaptive gradient methods do is they, but the problem is that this HT, so the reason we don't use the second order methods for our machine learning is that typically your theta is very high dimensional. Okay, so theta is like, let's say even 10,000 parameters. Okay, so let's say if you have 10,000 parameters, okay, so your HT is going to be 10,000 cross 10,000, and HT is always dense. Okay, so you can check that Hessian is always dense. Okay. Now what happens is, this is something like you are already, this is 100 million values. So if you have to calculate a matrix and then inverse a matrix of 100 million size, okay, every iteration, it is just not feasible. Okay. So what do you do? What you do is you calculate this GTT, or you calculate the gradient in a particular or like the rate of change of gradient, which is also sometimes just approximated as GT square, okay, in a particular direction. Okay, so you forget all the cross terms. Okay, you only look at the rate of change of gradient, or sometimes just the magnitude of gradient squared, okay, in each of these directions. Okay, so I here is the direction. Okay, for each I you do a Newton, so you scale the gradient by its either your GT is basically this. So either this, okay, let me put II here also. Okay, so the ith coordinate square. Okay, and this is what is called the adaptive gradient. Okay. Okay, and this is basically the AdaGrad method. Okay, yeah. Okay, and there is another commonly used method, or commonly supplied method, though it is not so much commonly used these days, is this RMS-Prof method. So RMS-Prof method, what it does is it uses again this momentum concept, okay, in calculating the adaptive or the second order gradient. Okay, okay, and then it does this. Okay, and there is also an ADA delta which uses momentum in gradient, but does a first order adaptive gradient. Okay, and then finally you have ADAM, which is the most widely used method. So it basically maintains both the gradient and the moment. Okay, and it uses this beta 1 and beta 2 are these momentum coefficients. So how much are you going to take the previous, sorry, yeah. So how much are you going to take the previous gradient direction and then also previous moment direction? Okay, this is the previous moment direction, and then sort of combine it with current moment direction and current gradient direction. Okay, and then it rescales using this 1 minus beta t. Okay, so this yeah, okay, and then finally it does a adaptive gradient update. So ADAM, you can think, is like adaptive momentum method. Okay, so here it is like adaptive momentum method. Okay, yeah, so this is what is the ADAM. Okay, yeah, so this is actually taken from Sebastian Ruder's blog. I will point it, I will give you the reference. Okay, so this compares how each of these methods perform. Okay, on a very sort of on a very typical or on a very difficult problem, you can think. Okay, so these are the contour lines. So I guess this, you can see that this is where somewhere the optimum is. Okay, and you are starting from here, which is somewhat higher than optimum. So so blue is kind of a lower optimum. So these are all roughly the low value regions, and these are the high value regions. Okay, so these regions are all high value regions. Okay, and as you go towards blue from red, okay, your objective function value decreases. So you can see that where it starts from, okay, the gradient is kind of pointing in this direction, and then finally your actual optimum is in this direction. Okay, so now let us see. So the red one is SGD. Okay, so this is SGD. Okay, so you can see that SGD is traveling very, very slowly. Okay, next, this green one is momentum. Okay, so momentum is traveling somewhat faster because it is not, because you are able to, you are using the past gradients, but it also overshoots a little bit because you are using the past gradients. Okay. Uh, uh, NAG is nested of accelerated gradient. It is behavior is, you can see, similar to momentum. Okay, and this blue line is ADA-grad. Okay, ADA delta is, as I mentioned, very similar to ADA-grad. Okay, yeah, so this ADA-grad and ADA delta, they both use adaptive gradient. Okay, and then the black one is RMS prop. So you can think that ADAM performs very similar to ADA delta. Okay, which also uses this ADA-grad and adaptive gradient. Yeah. Okay, and again, this is another visualization of the same set of methods. Okay, so and then here you can see that yeah, so you can see again RMS prop performs pretty good. Okay, this one is ADAM, so ADAM also performs very good. Okay, in this particular case it feels as though RMS prop is performing better, but ADAM is not far behind. So you can see this gray line is ADAM. Okay, so it is also performing. Yeah, so this is the gray line, which is the ADAM. Okay, so you can see that it is also performing very good. Okay. Okay, so x-axis is the number of epochs and y-axis is the accuracy. Okay, here. Okay. Yeah, so to summarize the last portion, there are two main ideas of acceleration which are at play. Okay, the first one is momentum, which is basically to provide consistency in update directions, in consecutive update directions. Okay, because your gradient is all is noisy, you want to have consistency in basically the update direction. So so that is why momentum is so very important. Okay, and the second important idea is this adaptive gradient, which is that scale the updates to individual variables using the second moment in that direction. Okay, uh, and this is called adaptive gradient because this adaptively alters the step length. Okay, by taking ideas from Newton's method. Okay, so this is all. Okay, so SGD proof I have taken from a paper by Yuri Nesterov. Okay, uh, yeah, many of the ideas are from MMDS book. Okay, so the acceleration techniques I have taken from this blog by Sebastian Ruder. Okay, and this sort of link has the learning rate comparison and the plots, basically some of the plots. Okay, yeah. So with that, let us stop. Okay. So yeah. So are there any questions?